Well, we're back again. Another, looks like out the window, pretty decent day, which is good.
It's beyond decent.
Oh, some of the weather this week has been spectacular. It's the reason why people live where we live.
And move in June.
Oh. It's and what I can't, having moved back to Augusta, is to have nice weather without gnats. You just, until you live well below the gnat line, you just don't really appreciate.
Yeah, the no-see-ums.
Yeah. Oh, there's something. But now it is 8:30. So what time is it? It is time for
Good morning, Good Shepherd.
It is again a wonderful morning. It's been a good week at Good Shepherd. There's some good stuff going on with the youth. We have some new guidelines from our bishop as far as worship goes that will be published this week, but we will be hearing a lot, I suspect, from the vestry. So there's some stuff in the air at Good Shepherd, and we hope to have some information out in the next couple days that I think will make people. It's hard to be happy in all this, but this will make people less sad for our current circumstances.
Right.
Which is nice to get something nice in Lent.
Yes, it is.
Because Lent's so often the other way around. Any other news that you can think of these days, Good Shepherd?
I was trying to
remember
this
Terry
morning.
Arliss.
Yeah.
Terry has COVID, as well as after having her heart attack. At least that's the information I got yesterday. So we want to remember Terry, especially in our prayers, and her son John, who's caring for her. She's the first one. Oh, and Ann Floyd. I know and remember Ann Floyd. Ann had a little heart difficulty and was admitted to university, but they caught it, I think, at a real good time before it got worse. So I want to remember Ann and her family this morning, especially her son in medical school. He's very concerned about his mom.
Rand, his name's Rand.
And Rand, her husband. So just Rand's not her husband.
Randall is his
Randall
name,
is her
yes.
husband. I interposed those names.
You almost got it right, because
Almost.
Rand is short.
Just 3 letters short.
Right.
Yeah.
But those are folks that come to mind.
We still have one of our colleagues. Many of you in Good Shepherd would have run into him, Billy Alford.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
The rector of St. Albans and Church of the Atonement in Augusta. And Billy has recently had very, very serious surgery and is recovering. We need to keep him in our prayers.
Billy is the best dressed priest in the diocese.
I always call
He's
him
always
your,
very
your
dapper.
eminence, and he offers me his ring for me to kiss. Billy is a prince
Yes.
Yeah.
of a priest and
Yes.
a man.
And one of the finest voices
Yes.
among
Yeah.
the clergy.
Yes.
He makes up for some of us who have no voice.
That would be me.
Oh, yes.
Well, you have a voice; it's just the same note all the time.
And it's not on the right line.
You're assuming it's an actual note. Pure note.
Might be in there somewhere.
I know some people who would disagree with you.
Okay.
It's sad. It's sad, but it is true. It is true. Well, Andy, we are now well into the season of Lent.
Yes, we are. Yes, the second Sunday of Lent today, in Lent. Not of Lent, in Lent. I was asked to talk a little bit about the origins of Lent and the celebrations, I wouldn't say celebrations, observations that go with it. And I want to really start off with this past Friday, where I did Stations of the Cross. Friday before I did it and had no one. But I had 4 people this past Friday. We did it outside. Roger has done a majestic job of creating artwork for the stations. The stations go, well,
different families made different
well, they were fantastic.
Yeah.
And I love the one that used the children's little toys, that little men. That was just great.
That was the Crichton
But
Shoe Off.
it was a perfect day. It started rainy, then the sun came out by the time we did stations, and We had a guest from St. Paul's here and a couple of our folk. And we just really had a very moving time as we circumnavigated the church and ended up back here at the garden on the side of the church, which is where we did the last station. We decided to go in there and do the last station there. But very meaningful. But where in the world did all that start? If you take your prayer book and look in there, it really doesn't tell you. In fact, I don't think the prayer book doesn't even have stations of the cross, and it doesn't. So when and where did these things begin? Lent comes from an old English word, which came from an older German word, because English is a Teutonic language, that means springtime. Now, the truth is, we can pretty much guess the time of Jesus' crucifixion because it came near what major event always celebrated in Hebrew history?
Passover.
Passover. See, y'all do know this. So we kind of know when the crucifixion took place, what time of year. Now, the birth of Jesus, different question. We won't go into all that. But Christians, after they began to be called Christians, the church began to organize, which didn't take them long, really. In terms of history, it did not take a long time. They realized that they needed to prepare and celebrate the events of Jesus' life. Now, Lent kind of happened. Observances of Lent happened in different places, and they did it different ways. Some of the research I did said that in one place in, I think, the Eastern Church, part of the Eastern Church, Lent was 12 weeks long. No thank you. It was extremely severe. In the West, it became set at 6 weeks prior to Easter. But even that was iffy. Some places in Italy did 9 weeks. Some places in France did 4 weeks. I mean, it's quite different. So let's talk about when and where did we fix 6 weeks. There's one theory that it just evolved into 6 weeks. There's another theory that the Council of Nicaea in 325 fixed it at 6 weeks. And of course, the Bishop of Rome went okie dokie. His word, he hadn't become Pope yet. The word Pope's not being used. He's the Bishop of Rome. It'll take until the 550s before the term Pope becomes exclusive to the Bishop of Rome. So Lent was set at 6 weeks. Now, you would probably not want to live back in the Middle Ages during a Lenten season. Europe was much colder than it is now. Food was scarce to begin with. And many people called it the season of beans, or the bean season, because what did they eat?
Beans, yeah.
Now, part of that's good because what are beans? What's in beans is nutritious, Bunny.
Oh gosh, don't be asking me stuff like that. Only thing I know is fiber.
And protein. And protein.
Yes.
Because you weren't getting any red meat.
Right, yeah.
In some places, even fish was banned. Cheese was banned. Milk products were banned. So it was and it came.
No chocolate?
No chocolate. We didn't know about chocolate yet. That hadn't come from the New World yet.
No, I don't want the Middle Ages at all.
Yeah, God bless those Native American folk down in Central America who found chocolate. But Lent was very harsh, and it was entirely penitential. There was little joy in Lent. And this shows even in the vestments. In the Catholic tradition, black became associated with the Lenten season.
Right.
The vestments were black. I remember going in the vestment museum at the Church of the Sacred Heart on the Notre Dame campus, and these stunningly beautiful black vestments. It was custom in some churches during entire 6 weeks of Lent to veil the cross in black. The altar hangings were black. It was a grim time.
Mm-hmm.
St. Cyprian's in Darien had black vestments.
Okay. At St. Mary's, we always veiled the cross. St. Mary's Episcopal Church, we always veiled the cross in purple. Because those colors, black that can be associated with Lent, are just unbleached linen.
Yeah.
We have here in our vestment chest somewhere a set of kind of unbleached linen cloth. Dark blue or purple and violet also in some places were associated with the Lenten season. Different things, and I'm going to hush and let folks ask questions or y'all add too. But you had to have observances to go with the Lenten season. So you had 6 weeks of penitence and fasting. And let's talk about stations, because if you've not walked Stations of the Cross, you are missing an enormous treat. Again, Friday was just stunningly beautiful. We were outside. We did have to compete with crows and mockingbirds fighting in the holly bush over here for berries, but that was kind of appropriate, the calls of the crows. But we think this really began probably in Jerusalem. We're not sure, but we think. Because pilgrims to Jerusalem would want to reenact the Via Dolorosa, the way to the cross. Now again, I think we do, is it 13 or 14? 14 stations, which is kind of the Catholic version. We include things that are not in the Bible because it's tradition. Can either one of you think of a couple of things we do in our stations that are not in the Bible?
Oh, I'm trying to think. And
How about the lady who is called Saint Veronica? What is it she's supposed to have done? She takes her cloth and wipes the face of Jesus, and I believe the churches in Spain, they hold what's called the mandilion. The imprint of Jesus' face is on that cloth. What does that sound like? Another cloth with an imprint.
Shroud of Turin.
Shroud of Turin. That's in the Catholic tradition. It's not biblical, but it really makes a good story. So anyway, there are a couple of things in there, and we include all that. Easter, Lent, Christmas, Advent are a bowl that can contain an enormous amount of stuff. So it speaks to the human heart as you walk the stations. And what took place in Jerusalem is different, usually religious groups, different orders, holy orders, would stage tableaus. And these were quite elaborate. If you go to Central America, South America, Mexico, Spain, Italy during the Lenten season, what are you apt to see up and down the roads and the highways, daytime and nighttime in the great cities? These massive parades carrying huge floats that weigh tons. And it might be the Virgin Mary, it might be Jesus, it might be Mary holding the dead Jesus. Some of these objects go back for centuries and they're treasured. The most extreme group that I know in the Philippines, I'm not observing Lent in the Philippines.
No.
These are called penitentes, penitents, and they are literally nailed to a cross. Philippine government tried to squash that a little bit, but no dice.
They don't leave them on there till they die.
No, they don't.
But they are nailed on a cross.
You are nailed to the cross. I've seen videos of that, and no thank you. Now, if some of you are really feeling sinful and think you need that, don't call us, because we're not going to do that. But anyway, the history is quite involved, and it really takes the edict from Council of Nicaea and the Bishop of Rome to set it at 6 weeks. Now, the church in the East bought the 6 weeks, but the Eastern Church, what we would call the Orthodox or Byzantine Church, their Easter is usually not the same as ours. Every now and then they coincide, but why is the Eastern season different? What's the difference?
In the Eastern Church, they actually work off the date of the Jewish Passover, whereas the Western Church, which includes Anglicans, we have a particular formula based upon the equinox.
The Paschal moon.
Yes.
but also because the Orthodox are on the Julian calendar. They've never adopted the Gregorian calendar. So their reckoning of time is different. The Gregorian calendar was created to catch us up. We were like 15, 16 days behind actual sun time, so that was corrected in the Gregorian calendar. But their Easter usually comes a week or two after ours. I'm not sure, does it fall together this year? You guys know?
I have not looked at it this year.
But anyway, it became a major service. And one last thing, and I'm going to shut up. A huge part of Lent was the preparation of baptismal candidates for baptism. The instruction really intensified. I read one article that said in Jerusalem at least, candidates had to go to instruction 3 hours, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Roger?
Orthodox Easter is Sunday, May 2nd this year, and Jack's Feast said that they have penitentes in rural New Mexico.
Oh yes, they in many, in some Hispanic countries where the devotion is really intense. All right, where was I going with that? Oh, baptismal instruction. You had to go to class. It really intensified. You did a lot of fasting. You did a lot of praying at the altar. Now I'm going to say this. I think this is incredible, and we don't do it today. We have a little document from the late first or early second century. So we don't have it all, but we have about 75 or 80% of it. And that document is called the Didache, which in Greek means the instructions. It's an instruction booklet on how to do baptism. And basically it says when the catechumenates are approaching the time for baptism, they take a vigil before the altar all night on Holy Saturday. So you don't eat and you don't go to sleep. This tells me the candidates were probably older. They weren't children. Right?
Yeah.
And it says the preferred mode is they go to the altar, then at the crack of dawn. And I love this. The deaconesses, they had deaconesses.
Yeah.
They weren't just men. Took the women,
Right.
and the deacons took the men and older boys, because how are you going to be baptized?
Absolutely nude.
Yeah.
Naked as a jaybird. And here's the part that Bunny really likes. In clear, cold running water.
Oh, no.
It had to be living water. Couldn't be a pool. Then you were given a gorgeous white robe of pure lamb's wool and allowed to take your first communion. You joined the Paschal feast. But the Didache goes on. It says all this is preferred, but it may not be possible. Listen at the practicality of the early church. You may not have enough water to dip them. Doesn't matter. Just get water on them. But what is the constant demand? You can't change the formula. What's the formula of baptism? I baptize you.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Has to be that Trinitarian formula.
Right.
So the early church set these goals, but also said, yeah, that's nice, but this may not be totally possible. So when did the baptism of infants begin to be really kind of begins in and around Rome during what horrible event? This predates the Didache, the Neronian persecution, where he's slaughtering Christian families. So the family said, we want our whole family, we don't have time for catechumenate instruction. Get us baptized. So the church did. All right, I've run my mouth. How about questions? Do we have any questions from anybody?
Yeah, what's the difference between giving up something for Lent and doing something extra during Lent?
Y'all take that on. What do you...
It's not,
You gotta repeat the question too.
okay. The question is, what's the difference between giving up something for Lent and taking on something for Lent? Well, theologically, it's probably not that different in that the point is that you want to be mindful of preparation of your own self, your own soul, for the great feast of Easter. Now, the giving up there is some significance to giving up. As a matter of fact, in the Episcopal Church, we have 2 fast days, and they are Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. Those are days of fast. Now, they don't define what the fast is, but it is to tell us that to some extent, by giving up something that we otherwise would enjoy, things of this world, like chocolate. And I'm being serious here. Boy, as a kid, giving up chocolate was a big deal for the season of Lent. It still is a big deal for some of us. You are saying that the things of this world are not as important to me as my faith. So that giving up does actually have some theological significance, but the general thrust of Lent is preparing us for the feast of the resurrection. And that can be done quite well with taking something on. Stations of the Cross, Fridays at noon, is a fabulous way to do that. It is a moving service. It doesn't last that long. But it's good to do both, because we live in a time where our focus is so much on the things of this world. And we need to draw back from that. However, if taking something on, like going to morning prayer, going to Stations of the Cross, if that helps take you out of this world just a little bit, a little less of this world, a little bit more of the focus on our faith, then we are doing that preparation. Now, the next question is, Lent, as you said, is now set 6 weeks. There was another season of Lent. What was the other season of Lent?
Advent.
Advent.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
And it was actually called St. Martin's Lent. It went for 7 weeks. It began on the feast of St. Martin of Tours. And it was for us to pull ourselves back in order to prepare for the feast of the Incarnation. And that's why the vestments for Advent are supposed to be the same as the vestments for Lent, either blue or purple. I grew up at a time where, in my household, parties were basically banned. Preparing for Christmas. Christmas came on, sundown on December 24th. Prior to that time, it was, as in our household, as strict as we didn't have to give up food and such, but the idea of not having celebrations.
Yeah.
That's why.
And Christmas tree. My mother, their Christmas tree was put up on Christmas Eve after she went to bed.
Yeah, my
And then
northern cousins did that.
Yeah.
We thought we were much better off. But I want to make a little note on fasting, if I can, Ted. One of the articles I read by the 4th, 5th century, the idea about fasting was they realized you had to eat something. Especially pregnant women were given leeway to eat more food.
Children.
Sick people, older people, children. But for those observing Lent, one article which I thought was really neat said you have to, and I've forgotten the word they called it. I wish I could remember the word. There's a name for it. But you basically ate 2 very small meals a day.
I'm forgetting the word too. I know exactly what you're talking
But
about.
the idea behind it is eat enough to live, but not enough to completely satisfy your hunger.
Right.
That concept that you had to, well, I don't want to use the word suffer, but that's what you had to suffer. You join your sufferings with Christ.
Right.
Now, somehow denying myself another piece of chicken kind of pales in the light of the sacrifice of the Son of God. But folks, if you're tactile and sensory like I am, that's one reason I like food. You start doing that, it does drive home. I did a meatless Lent one year. It was the hardest thing I've ever done because I'm a meat eater. I love meat. But giving up meat, that's when I learned to really appreciate plant-based protein. So anyway, enough of that, but that's the idea.
and you don't want what you give up to be the focus of the
Exactly.
sacrifice you're making.
Exactly.
And that goes back to the hunger. If you're so hungry that you can't think about why you are fasting,
Right.
it makes a difference. And so that's something I think we have to be careful with too.
Yeah.
The monastics in the rule of St. Benedict first thing is being a monk, a Benedictine monk, was fairly challenging as it was.
As it was.
In chapel 8 times a day, including 3 o'clock at night. And ordinarily in the rule of St. Benedict, if my memory serves, they ate 2 meals a day. They were allotted a certain amount of beer too, by the way,
Yes.
interestingly enough.
Well, that's a staple food
It's a
for
staple.
Germans.
Yeah,
However,
and
during
wine.
Lent, they went to 1 meal a day
Yeah.
for those monks who could withstand it.
Right.
Those who were sick or were older, it would, again, practicality. But it was to put you in mind of the season in preparation for the great sacrifice. You're right, if it becomes the focus, if it's not directing you towards the sacrifice of Jesus, then essentially it's become another idol.
Right, yes, yes, yes.
And the church doesn't like idolatry.
No.
This is
But
not
isn't
good.
that a fine line?
It's
Very fine line.
Very fine
Just
line.
like self-righteousness
Yes.
is a fine, holier than thou is a very fine line.
And that goes to the taking on something during Lent.
Yeah.
You can become so proud of yourself for doing that. But another thing about taking things on for Lent is that perhaps during that 6 weeks time, you could bring a good habit, like going to morning prayer.
Yeah, right.
If you do that every day during Lent, then perhaps you'll continue to do that later
Well,
on.
isn't a key part of our observance regimen, establishing a regimen?
Yeah.
You might call it rule of life or whatever, but get back to regular devotions. Read morning prayer, read evening prayer, read midday prayer. Get back to your Bible studies. Engage in your prayer life seriously. Make that a part of your daily and nightly regimen.
There are a few people here at Good Shepherd would remember, this goes back a long way, but during Lent, on Mondays, the children were brought back to, at 3 after school, I guess it would be about 3:30 or 4 o'clock, you came for Lenten instruction at the church. And if you attended every one of them, you got a green plant, a boxwood. Interestingly enough, there are a lot of boxwoods all over Somerville that came out of the kids going to their Lenten instructions on Mondays, and they got a little boxwood that the rector had grown from his yard,
Wow.
cuttings that had rooted all during the fall and the spring.
Now, see,
And-
I didn't. That is fascinating.
That's a
So
sweet
your
story.
dad did that.
Oh yeah. Now I will
Wow.
say, as a young elementary school person who wanted to go out and play, coming to church on Monday afternoon was not necessarily my favorite thing, but I do say this, I do think that it has helped me. It became part of my formation that I understand the need to prepare for Lent, prepare for Easter through Lent. And I think it has always benefited from me.
One of the things that, many things drew me to the Episcopal Church, the main thing was worship. I grew up in a great Baptist church, but things like Lent and Advent were just not part of my vocabulary. We were part of that radical Reformation that threw out the baby with the bathwater. But one of the things that struck me when Glenda and I, we used to have evening prayer here. I think, was it every Tuesday night, I think? That was the first service I ever attended at Good Shepherd. And it was the reverence and preparation for worship. So the idea behind Lent, Advent, all the holy seasons is prepare. Something great is coming, something you can't describe is going to happen to you. Get ready for it. Get ready. What's the line from the hymn about the watchman's cry? The watchman is saying, dawn's coming, but get ready. It's coming. The bridegroom's coming. Get ready. So I love that theme of preparation.
You know, it's interesting, almost all the, going back to Advent a little bit here, almost all the Advent lessons are about getting ready. That's, again, when it was viewed as a penitential season. Sadly, I would say we still have the concept of Lent as a penitential season, but the concept of Advent as a penitential season
Yes.
has darn near been lost
Yeah.
in our
Yeah.
current society. Well, we have hit
That
9
time.
o'clock that quickly today. Hope that you all will join us for our service at 9:15. on YouTube and on, let's see,
Facebook.
Please join us. And then Christian Formation at 10 o'clock. We have 3 different programs. Andy leads one, I lead one, Bunny.
But
No, yours is not going today.
We're not meeting today,
You're not
yes.
because Bunny has been called to go down and preach at St. Paul's today.
That's
And so
right.
she would not be able to do
All
that.
right, you might want to mention Wednesday night.
Wednesday
Yes.
night, yes, we have a program, and you thought your ancestors were crazy. So we're taking a look at the great figures of the Bible that are actually in Jesus' ancestry. And we're looking at them without the rose-colored glasses that they are generally presented. This is not your children's Bible study.
And that's at 6 o'clock
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
7 to 7:45.
on Wednesday evening. And I'm on this week, I
Yes, you are.
believe, and I've got Abraham.
It's good that we told you what time, though, so you weren't.
Well, I'd have figured it out. I let them watch it.
Yes. So please join us, and also please stay aware that there may be some news. Not maybe, there will be some news coming with regards to our services because of the change of the bishop's guidance. I think that it will. Nothing's going to please all of us until we can get back to everything as it always
Right.
was. But I think that we will see some things that will be heartening to many people. Thank you all.